educational consultant, and myself, a CDC public health advisor.
We do not anticipate any issues today, but just in case, please write down this email address for assistance. To join the audio portion, you can call in at 888-324-9431. Use the passcode 927-5206.
So this webinar was specifically designed for you, and we're asking that you please complete all polling questions. This will let us know if we're communicating the information to you correctly. Because you will be in listen-only mode until the end for a question-and-answer session, please write down your questions in the chat box as we move through the presentation.
And once again, just in case you needed more time to write this email address, we wanted to give you another opportunity to note it. And also, for the audio portion, please dial 888-324-9431 and use the passcode 927-5206.
Okay, we will begin in approximately 1 minute. We want to give others an opportunity to make sure they've had a chance to log in for today's session. At least make sure you're logged in for the audio as well. Again, we'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us today as we follow up on the pre-recorded introduction to digital data loggers for VFC providers. We wanted to let you know that the California VFC program does not endorse any particular product, vendor, or manufacturer, so any images shown are for demonstration purposes only.
By the end of this presentation, you will be able to explain the 2018 VFC temperature monitoring requirement, locate the minimum digital data logger specification needed for compliance, and locate available tools and resources.
We wanted to remind you of the benefits of using digital data loggers other than the fact that it will protect your vaccine inventory. We know that using digital data loggers, it will monitor your vaccine temperatures 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Another nice feature is it will provide alarm alerts for clinic staff of any temperature excursions. Also will determine how long vaccines have been exposed to out-of-range temperatures. And it will also let you know how a storage unit's temperatures increase and decrease over time. The most important thing that we like about digital data loggers is it will reduce the need for patient revaccination and loss of patient confidence. So in case you're not aware, in the 2018 Program Participation at a Glance document, you'll find additional information on this requirement. In this document, you'll find where it states each device must have a valid certificate of calibration. It must also meet VFC specifications. And each site must have at least one backup data logger in case the primary device is being calibrated or breaks. And you must use a digital data logger to monitor temperatures during vaccine transport and at approved mass vaccination clinics.
If your practice is still using traditional thermometers, it's time to transition to digital data loggers. Traditional min-max thermometers only provide basic temperature information, the warmest and coldest temperature reached, and not the total exposure time. If your practice still doesn't have digital data loggers in all storage units with VFC vaccines, don't panic. There are several resources available for guidance to ensure your practice meets compliance.
And to help guide you with this compliance, we wanted to let you know what the minimum specifications are for a digital data logger. Any temperature monitoring systems utilized must meet all specifications listed here in order to meet VFC program requirements. Temperature readings from monitoring devices that do not meet these requirements, and yet you have valid certificates of calibration, still cannot be considered valid and used for the determination of vaccine viability.
From discussions and lessons learned from using digital data loggers, we found these helpful tips will ease implementing digital data loggers into your practice. A clear, simple display will make your twice-daily readings a simple task. Avoid loggers that use confusing symbols or icons and those with small, hard-to-read displays. Temperature downloaded reports. Some units may only include basic data download reports containing hundreds of readings without a detailed summary report. Look for units that include a summary of temperatures and alarms for the download period. Graphs are very helpful. Alarms and notifications. Most loggers will have visual or audible alarm notification. Newer systems store data directly to a cloud, making access to temperature data real-time from any location. Consider this option if your clinic is technologically oriented, with IT staff support, or just have tech-savvy staff.
So oftentimes we receive calls from providers asking us which data logger it is that I need to purchase. So we wanted to spend a couple of moments reviewing how to locate these particular vendors and manufacturers so that when you're ready to purchase or buy, you have a good source to go to. This resource can be accessed from EZIZ homepage, and it provides information on where to buy digital data loggers if you have not done so yet. When you're on the EZIZ homepage, in the top right corner, you'll see a box labeled New. When you click on digital data loggers, on that landing page, you'll find this box. And as you can see, there's other information in there as far as data logger specifications, unacceptable temperature monitoring devices, purchasing considerations, and when you're ready to purchase. Scroll down to when you're ready to purchase, and when you click on that, this box will appear and it will show you all of the vendors and manufacturers that we know carry digital data loggers that meet compliance for both the refrigerator as well as the freezer. Again, we have to stress, we do not endorse any particular brand or model. One of the other resources we wanted to bring to your attention is the data logger pre-purchase worksheet. There are many digital data loggers on the market. We suggest you use this worksheet when speaking to vendors to compare models to determine if they meet your practice needs as well as VFC program requirements. This worksheet will allow you to compare up to 3 models to determine which model will work best for your particular practice or clinic. Another helpful resource is as you're researching devices, the Certificate of Calibration Quick Guide provides the specifications that vendors must be able to comply with. Make sure any device you research includes these specifications. This guide is also going to be helpful when it's time for your devices to be calibrated, tested later on.
Once you've purchased your data logger, the data logger setup and use job aid tells how devices should be set up and how they are to be used for monitoring temperatures. Once you've purchased your device, this job aid provides information for setting up the data logger for use. It provides instructions for completing the log, what you need to do if there is no alarm, what you need to do if an alarm went off, and this document also provides additional information regarding the roles and responsibilities of the supervisor.
So in the last 10 minutes, these are the job aids or resources and tools that we've been able to share with you. The Digital Data Logger Comparison Guide, Data Logger Vendors and Distributors, the Data Logger Pre-Purchase Worksheet, the Certificate of Calibration Quick Guide, the Data Logger Setup and Use, and how to record temperatures. We're hoping that you'll take the time after this webinar to browse EasyIZ under Digital Data Loggers to explore all of the other resources that are available. So let's talk a little bit about configuring your data logger. We want you to pay really close attention to the alarm settings, making sure that you use the right settings, just as listed here. We want you to make sure that you set the recording interval for a minimum of 30 minutes, which I know is different from what you were previously instructed of 15 minutes. Just as important, when you're setting up or configuring your device, make sure you use the same temperature scale in the device that you're going to be using on the temperature log. So if you set your device up in Fahrenheit, then the temperature log you should be completing should correspond and be in Fahrenheit. We think it's really helpful that you take the time to identify the storage unit, as in this example, injection room unit number 2. That way, anytime someone is looking for this data, they know exactly what it corresponds to. Also helpful is when you're connecting and disconnecting the device, ensure that the probe is completely connected. In most cases, you should hear a click to let you know that the probe is in properly. If you don't do this, you will run the risk of getting strange temperature readings.
Let's take a minute and discuss staff training. Vaccine temperatures must be monitored by trained and competent staff. So make sure all staff responsible for temperature monitoring responsibilities are adequately trained. Know the meaning of all icons displayed in the unit's display screen, including low battery indicators. Staff should practice and demonstrate proficiency before using a new unit or system. To record temperatures on VFC program logs, practice should include reading temperatures, identifying alarms in the unit, reading alarm temperatures, properly starting and stopping the unit, and downloading and saving data. Staff should also become very familiar with different reports and the reporting functionality for each digital data logger. Identification of temperature excursions and time frames is critical when filing a VFC storage and handling online triage system or SHOTS report with the VFC program.
So we've provided you with a lot of information right now. So this next slide is actually a polling question, and it's going to let us know if we're communicating this information to you correctly. So, first question, does having a digital data logger in place eliminate the need to physically check and record temperatures twice daily? You have about 15 seconds to answer. Okay, waiting for the total results. Oh, this is great. Overwhelmingly, everyone agreed that that answer is false, and that is correct. Even with having a digital data logger, storage units containing VFC vaccines must be checked and inspected at least twice daily. Thank you.
For your daily monitoring practices, temperatures must be inspected twice a day and recorded on VFC's temperature logs. Ensure you record the current, minimum, and maximum temperatures that you see on the display. Just in case you were not aware, the temperature monitoring logs for 2018 have been redesigned for use with digital data loggers. Notice on the upper right-hand corner of the box on the display, files should be easily retrievable and accessible to VFC field staff and vaccine management staff. Temperature files and VFC temperature logs must be kept for 3 years, as this is a VFC program requirement.
So this leads us to the very next polling question. Data files from digital data logger must be downloaded and saved at minimum twice a month. Is that true or false? Oh my goodness, I am really excited. Again, overwhelmingly, you says the answer is true, and that is correct, which is going to take us to our very next slide.
Temperature download practices. Temperature data must be downloaded from the data logger a minimum of twice a month, or sooner if a temperature alarm went off. Data downloads should be stored in an electronic file folder on your computer. Data files should be named so they can be easily identified by supervisors and other key practice staff. A separate file for each unit is highly recommended. Again, temperature files and VFC temperature logs must be kept for 3 years.
So this takes us to our last and final polling question. Out-of-range temperatures must be reported to Storage and Handling Online Triage System, better known as SHOTS, at myvfcvaccines.org. True or false? I think they're going to all get this one correct because they are doing really good with these polling questions. Five seconds. Oh my God, everyone said true, and again, that is correct. So we know that we're providing you with the correct information. We wanted to spend a little more time talking about out-of-range temperatures. We want you to take appropriate actions for all out-of-range temperatures. So it's really key that you get familiar with the icons, symbols, and notifications that are on your device. You want to make sure that if an alarm is triggered, that you take corrective actions as instructed on the temperature log. And you want to make sure you report all excursions at myvfcvaccines.org. Supervisors must ensure that appropriate action has been taken for all out-of-range temperatures.
Data logger reports are required. Staff with temperature monitoring responsibilities should become very familiar with the different reports and reporting functionality of the digital data logger in their practice. Download temperature data files a minimum of twice a month or sooner if a temperature alarm went off. Make sure you can locate the time, the date, the minimum, the maximum temperatures, and the total time the temperatures were out of range, either above or below the alarm limits. Review every time an alarm goes off before you report the excursion, and learn how to analyze and review for any out-of-range temperatures. Let's take a moment and discuss device maintenance. As with any electronic device, regularly check the battery indicator, which may appear as a battery icon on the digital display as in the image on the screen. Calibration expiration dates. As required, save the certificate of calibration that came with your unit. Use the Certificate of Calibration Quick Guide, IMM 1119, for additional guidance. Update your practice's vaccine management plan. Make sure you update all information, including the model number and calibration dates, for each digital data logger in your vaccine management plan.
So hopefully most of you are aware we have launched the 2018 recertification, and we wanted to make sure that providers are aware that they must comply with this requirement in order to recertify for VFC program participation. So this means all temperature monitoring devices, again, including any backup units in your practice, must be replaced with VFC-compliant data loggers now. If not, your practice may not be able to fully complete the 2018 recertification. We can't stress enough, recertification is required for continued vaccine ordering privileges. So this concludes the webinar that we had designed for you today. And so far, these are the main things that we discussed and covered.
The minimum requirements for digital data loggers in all VFC vaccine-containing units. Tips
and resources for successful implementation of data loggers in your practice.
Temperature monitoring practices, including downloading temperature data into computer files.
And of course, that all California VFC providers are required to use a digital data logger for the monitoring of any VFC vaccine storage unit. And again, resources are available at www.eziz.org. Now what we like to do is go ahead and answer or do our best to answer the questions that you may have. Just so you know, we do have other subject matter experts in the room to help you with your questions. So Melinda, if you could you please open up the phone line for questions?
Thank you. And at this time, to ask a question, please press star followed by the number 1. Please unmute your phone and record your name clearly at the prompt. To withdraw your request, please press star 2. Once again, please press star 1 at this time for any questions over the phone. One moment, please. We have our first question from Alicia. Your line is open.
Thank you. I do have a question with our thermometers with the DDLs. We have one for the freezer that seems to be giving us problems, and we've been trying to, we ordered a new one to see if that was the problem. Maybe there was a short in the line. But if we needed somebody to come out to the site to explain to us on exactly how to use it, would that be available?
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, you're having some problems with the current digital data logger, and you're wondering if someone from our program could come out and assist you?
Yeah, or somebody can explain how it's, because we got we have the refrigerator ones working, but for some reason our freezer one is not, it's not showing any type of temperature log on there.
Okay.
So you're still using our backup one.
Got it. Okay. Without me knowing exactly which device you're using, and it's okay, I really don't want you to mention that particular device.
Okay.
The first suggestion that I have for you, or question I have you tried to reach out to the vendor or the manufacturer to see if they've been able to give you any technical support?
No, I have not yet. It just happened like this week, so I was just asking.
Okay, no, it's not a problem. That would be my suggestion to you, is to reach out to them, because again, there are so many devices on the market. Mm-hmm. There are some that we are very familiar with, and then there are others that we're not familiar with. But when you're on the phone with them, okay, I would ask that you have in front of you the setup and use guide, because if the device is not configured correctly, mm-hmm, you can have that information in front of you as they're providing you with some technical support.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question from Julie Pisano. Your line is open.
My question is, we have a Delta track, and the alarm for the freezer goes off every time the temperature changes, and it's not out of range, but it's kind of, you know, not annoying, but it always goes off, and I don't know if that's something I can change or if that's just going to be going off every time the temperature rises or drops on the freezer.
Okay. So you have Delta track, and it's being very sensitive, and you're constantly getting alarms?
Yeah, it just rings like maybe like 2 times, and I check it, but it's in the ranges where it's supposed to be for the freezer. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I hate to say this, but this is making me think that you might want to call the manufacturer. There might be a glitch or maybe something wrong with that particular data logger. I'm curious to know if you know what model number it is.
Yeah. I have, let's see. It's 40527.
Okay. I was hoping that that was the one you mentioned, because that one does work in both, it does meet our requirements for both the refrigerator and for the freezer. I do know that there were going to be some updates to the software So I would strongly encourage you to give them a call and explain to them what you're running into with this particular device. It could be the device itself, or it could be something with the settings.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay,
and
thank you.
One more thing I would like to add, Michelle, is just double check the configuration settings on the alarm limit. Sometimes, you know, that may be one of the things that may be triggering your unit to alarm because it might not be configured to the correct alarm limit.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next question from Margie. Your line is open.
Thank you. We just had a question regarding power outage. What would be your recommendations as to what do we need to do when it happens? Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'm almost tempted not to say this, but almost all of the digital data loggers, at least the ones that I am familiar with, they do have the backup batteries or batteries in them so that if you do lose power, they will still continue to operate. The only thing is, depending on the model, determines how much longer that device will continue to work. Some say a couple of hours, some say up to 24 hours, where it will still be able to collect data in the event of a power outage.
Okay, so maybe it's a good advice for us to check on that information from the manufacturer, or from the device.
Yes, I would recommend two things. Double check with the manufacturer, just as you just suggested. And then the second thing I suggest is keep your eye on that battery indicator symbol or icon on your device. Oftentimes, people forget that it's there, or they forget to look for that particular icon, because once you lose power with the battery, then you're not getting any readings. So please keep an eye on the battery indicator icon on your device.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question from Daniela. Your line is open.
Hi. My organization is the Indian Health Center, and we are a multi-site, and we have multiple storage units in each of our clinics. So I guess my question is, for the backup data logger, do we need to have one backup data logger per unit? So meaning if one of my clinics has 3 storage units for vaccines, I need 3 backup data loggers. Is that correct?
Hello. Thank you for your question. So the concept of a backup data logger is so that, well, our requirements state that you have to have at least one data logger as a backup for your clinic. And we say at least because we don't necessarily know exactly how many units your clinic has. The purpose of a backup data logger is to assist you when you actually send your primary units to get recalibrated. So you need to have a data logger in your units at all times. So if you have more than one refrigerator, you might need to have more than one data logger, unless you stagger your calibration cycles for all of your units. The other thing is that if you need to transport vaccines as an emergency, and you have a lot of vaccines and you might need multiple coolers, you might need more than one data logger. So we always tell clinics to assess the need of your clinic. If you have 3 refrigerators, you don't necessarily have to have one backup per unit. You might actually need to consider maybe having certainly more than one because of the volume of vaccines you have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question from Jessica Estrada. Your line is open.
Hi. So my question is, how would I set up my data logger to record every 30 minutes?
Okay, your question is, how do you set up your data logger to record in the 30-minute intervals?
Yes.
Okay, that's going to be in the configuring setup of the device. I don't know if you're using software or what you're using to configure your device in, but there should be somewhere in there in the program or in the software where it's asking you the recording interval that you would like for your device.
Okay, so I would have to look for that.
Yes, you'd have to look for that. And we've, before we did say 15-minute intervals, but we've learned that 30-minute intervals is acceptable. And then the other thing we've learned by setting it at 30-minute intervals is it does save the battery life on your battery. And if you should decide to go and print your report, you'll have less pages to print because it's only getting temperatures every 30 minutes as opposed to every 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So in some ways it'll save you paper if you decide to print, and it saves the life of the battery.
Okay. And then one other question. Once we download the information from the USB, it automatically has all the information like the time and the date and the temperatures, right?
Well, it depends. I don't know exactly, again, what you're working with or what you're using. In some data loggers, it will automatically download for a particular period of time. Sometimes you have to tell it what period of time you want to download that data.
Okay, I see. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Next question is from Nicole. Your line is open.
Hi there. I was just wondering if other people need to use this webinar, how often is it available?
That's a really good question. This particular webinar was just for today, and we held it also yesterday. We are recording this, and we're going to see what we can do to make it available to all of our providers in the state. We are planning to, we've come to recognize that we will be doing more webinars like this in the coming months. So we do recommend that you keep your eye out for any communications that come out. But we are making every effort to make this recording available. So please check back with us in about a week, and hopefully we'll be able to communicate that this is available online so that you can have access to it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question from Meja Goldsmith. Your line is open.
Yes, hi. We have several the digital loggers, and those are, the calibration is expired, so we have put aside. So what do we do with those? Can it be recalibrated?
Okay. Well, I'm not exactly sure what you are, again, I don't know which digital data loggers you're using. I don't know if they still have the features that we require.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do go to EasyIZ, you will find a list of vendors or companies that we are aware of in the state of California and outside of the state of California that will calibrate test data loggers to our specifications.
Okay, and how expensive are those usually?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
How expensive are those to calibrate? I'm wondering whether we should buy a new one or just get the recalibrated.
I wish I could answer that for you because I don't know what your budget is. But we have found in some situations, providers have decided to go ahead and get a new digital data logger as opposed to having them calibrated tested because they found out it was cheaper to do it that way.
Oh, okay.
So in actuality, that'll have to be a decision that you make at your practice as to which is the best direction to go. If your current digital data logger meets all of our specifications and you don't have to do a lot of staff training and staff are very familiar with that particular device, then perhaps you would want to look into getting it calibrated tested. If you just want to start all over with something new, then you might want to consider going ahead and purchasing new digital data loggers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That's great information. And I think we have found through looking at different vendors to post on our site that calibration really averages anywhere between $90 to $150. And we say average because it will depend on how complex your unit is. A unit that is, linked to your IT system might be more expensive. But simple calibration really shouldn't be very costly. It should be around the cost of your data logger. And I stress that because I want to make sure that nobody's paying, astronomical amounts. So we encourage you to at least contact 2 or 3 different calibration labs so that you can get a good estimate and quote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question from Tanya. Your line is open.
Yes. I have a data digital logger by Fisher Scientific excursion track. My question is, when I put in a USP to do the interval for every 30 minutes to record the temperature, my temperature is reading in Celsius, not in Fahrenheit.
Okay.
And then my question, and then also because of the report, like you show on the training, it had the graph. We don't have the ability to do that.
Okay, so I'm getting 2 parts to your question. You're using the excursion track, and it's only allowing you to record the temperatures in Celsius.
Right.
Okay. Now, you can have that changed to Fahrenheit if that's what you prefer, because we don't want you trying to convert those temperatures from Celsius to Fahrenheit.
Right.
And unfortunately, with this particular data logger, you have to call the vendor directly because they will give you step-by-step instructions on how to do that. So it's important that you make sure you're using the Celsius temperature logs for now until you can get that changed to Fahrenheit.
Okay, and what about the graph? Like when the VFC people come down to our clinic and look at, we have to print out a report for them, or how would we do that?
Okay, well, what that's going to require is you using the USB to download the data. When you plug that USB into the excursion track, there is a red dot that will blink while it is downloading the data. Once it's done downloading the data, the dot will not, the red dot will not blink. That's the time where you want to remove the USB.
Right.
And then insert it into your computer.
Yes.
So my only educated guess is that maybe you don't have the correct program or software to download that. But then when I think about Excursion Track, I don't remember them providing you with a graph.
No, they don't.
What they provide you with is when you print that or look at your temperature data files, if you had any alarms triggered, that will be at the top of the report.
Okay.
And then following those readings will be all of the readings that were gathered during your interview period.
Okay. So basically, like you're saying that we only download the data from the USB is twice a month?
Okay, you do it twice a month because, you know, every 2 weeks there needs to be a supervisory review of the temperature logs. But if there is a temperature excursion during that 2-week period, you need to download that data.
Okay. And is it okay if we don't have the graph?
With the excursion track, that is okay because that device does not provide graphs.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. Not all of them provide a graph. And
right.
I think part of this webinar, we wanted to highlight that when you're ready to buy a new one, looking at the features and graph options and reporting options is important. It really helps, but it's not absolutely necessary that your data logger has to have a graph.
Okay, but it's okay for us to, I mean, what I'm saying is the guideline is matched with VFC, correct? Like if we don't have the graph, we're not going to be.
Absolutely, yes, you are okay. We would like, I mean, it's very helpful to you, but it's not a requirement.
A requirement, yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, okay.
And then my last tip for you as well, and actually this just came in from one of our reps, and we will actually try and see if we can find this and post for you all that may have an excursion track and have the same issue of conversion. There might be some YouTube videos that actually from the vendor on how to convert, Celsius to Fahrenheit. So we will actually be able to find those and see if we can actually share them with you.
Yeah, because I look every instruction how to set it up to Fahrenheit. They don't have anything. It's all in Celsius, and I don't know why. I have to call, like you said, the vendor to see what happened.
Right. Okay, or again, go on to YouTube and put in excursion track, and you can take a look at, they have some really nice short and quick videos on how to set up the device.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, now we know that we learned yesterday that we did not have the ability to get to everyone's questions. So what we wanted to do is make sure you had an opportunity to submit your question if we're not able to get to your question today.
So before we take the next question, we do have some questions that have come in via online, and since we're talking about reports, I'd like to address just a few questions that have come in related to downloading the report. Do we need to upload data logger information online twice a month to myvfcvaccines.org? And we have received similar permutations of that question. So as Michelle mentioned with the previous caller, the requirement is that you actually download your data logger information twice a month or sooner if your fridge has a temperature excursion. But once you download that information, you save it to your computer, and you save it according to the guidelines that we have on our job aids. If you have an excursion, then you upload that temperature report to myVFC Vaccines only. So you don't upload everything each and every time, 2 shots. You only upload whenever you have a temperature excursion. And you would actually upload that summary report or that monthly report or 2-week period which shows the temperature excursion.
Another question that I've seen is there's a question, if the digital data logger you want to purchase or have available now in your practice is not listed in our list of vendors and distributors, is that still good or is it still viable? Without knowing exactly what that device is, I can't answer that question. However, you can call our the VFC line, and we can let you know if that particular device does meet requirements. Again, there are hundreds of digital data loggers out on the market, and there's only a couple of vendors and manufacturers that we are aware of at this point that meet requirements for the California VFC program. So it's really helpful if you call us and ask us if your device meets, because then that'll let us know if this is another device that we may not have been aware of that meets our requirements.
Okay, we have another question on the chat line here. It says, how long do we need to keep the data from the digital data loggers? It is a VFC program requirement for temperature logs and digital data logger data to be kept for 3 years.
And maybe this would be the last question before we take a few questions more from the phone. Do you have specific guidelines or criteria to be aware, considering staff responsibilities on data logger as well as any job aids on downloading data? So our vaccine management plans and our vaccine coordinator job aid has some information about the role of a vaccine coordinator. We actually have on the new provider agreement addendum as part of your recertification have actually outlined step by step all of the different items that need to happen and as part of temperature monitoring responsibilities, staff training. So I would encourage you to take a look at the provider agreement addendum, the items on staff training and digital data loggers. They are very clearly enumerated as to what needs to happen and how often and by whom. So that's a really good resource that we can point you out to. As it is our program participations at a glance, the digital data logger page, that's page number 4 on this document, we actually try to put bulleted items for you to take a look at what needs to happen, how often and by whom. As for temperature downloads, I believe that was the other job aid. We don't particularly have anything, but these webinars really are helping us determine what resources are needed that we need to develop to support you all in transitioning from a traditional min-max thermometer to a data logger. So thank you for bringing these things up because they do help us develop materials to support your needs.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Melinda, can you see if there's any other questions on the line?
Thank you. Next question is from Lourdes. Your line is open.
Yes, my question will be, where do you upload your information or your report once you download it into your USB? Where do we go to upload it to VFC?
Okay, is that because you have an excursion or there is no excursion?
No, there is no excursion or anything. It's just the first time. We are just learning from listening to all the other questions that other practices have. So it will be our first time, so I don't know.
That's a great question. One of the things that we're suggesting that you do when you configure your device is that you have an opportunity during that process to name that particular unit. It could be vaccine storage unit, second floor, it could be vaccine unit, hallway. We want you to go ahead and give it a name or identify it. When you go to download that data, that particular unit has already been identified. So we're asking you to come up with some type of naming convention because you want to save those files to your computer. So, for example, you're saying this is the first one that you're doing. Yes. So let's say the 2-week period is from February 1st until February 15th.
Okay.
If you have identified it as vaccine storage unit first floor, then next to that I would put 0201 underscore 0215. That way when I look at that particular file name, I know that that is for the second month, first day, through the second month, the 15th day. That's just one possibility.
But Michelle, this information is captured in one of our job aids, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, you can find this in the data setup and use guide, where it will give you some examples on how to do the naming convention, and that's IMM 1206.
And just to confirm, we wish you luck on your first download, but you do save it to your computer, and you do not need to upload that information into SHOS. Once again, you only upload a file if you have an excursion, and the file that you would upload is the one that has the temperature excursion. Otherwise, every 2 weeks, you would actually download and save it in your computer following the guidance that Michelle just shared with everybody.
Okay, one other question. Do I need to have a separate USB for the freezer and refrigerator?
I wish I could say yes or no. I do not know the capacity of this particular USB that you're using. I don't know the size of it. I don't know what the ease of use would be in your practice with having one or having two.
Okay.
But it does make sense to have two. You don't have to have two. But you can just maybe you might just color code it so that way you know which files are for what when you're downloading them to the computer. But one will certainly work.
And of course, because we're always stressing having a backup, you may want to have one as a backup in case for whatever reason you have issues with the main one that you're using.
Okay, I have one other suggestion. Since there's so many thermometers and whatever, wouldn't it be easier for VFC to just say, this is the one we want, this is what we want you guys to use? It would be so much easier, like, for example, when you guys have this type of webinars, we are dealing just with a device, you know, preferred device through VFC. You know what I'm saying? Because there's like so many. It's very confusing for different offices to try to meet the criteria of whatever VFC wants or needs. Do you know what I mean?
I understand.
Would that be a possibility?
Yeah, you know, I really do appreciate all of the providers out there that are doing everything that they can to make sure that they're compliant so that they can provide vaccines to their patients. We know that this is something that is critical.
But there are so many different vendors out there, and then we cannot actually prefer a particular vendor over another vendor. It is actually very difficult for us, or almost impossible for us, to tell you one particular brand.
Yeah, and we also have to take into consideration we are working with providers in very small practices where if the doctor may be the only person in the office, to very large, high-volume practices. And it's difficult to find a one-size-fits-all for all practices.
I see.
And then you have some of these devices where you need dedicated IT support. If you're a small practice, you may not have IT support.
Right, okay.
Okay?
Okay,
so,
well, that makes sense. It's just, you know, it's been kind of like, kind of wondering, you know, just trying to go the best way possible for, you know, to comply. And it's like, you know, so, but we will do our best. Thanks for the advice, and we'll work on it.
Okay. All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, it's 12:57. We wanted to do everything we could to respect everyone's time because we recognize that most likely this is your lunch hour or your lunch time. So we're going to try to take one last question. And would you please, if you have any additional questions, please submit them to myvfcvaccines@cdph.ca.gov. And in the subject line, please put VFC Data Logger Webinar Question.
And for our last question, it comes from Nancy. Your line is open.
Yes, hello?
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, I'm sorry. So we've currently been using the data logger, and I just wanted to make sure. I know that the new recording interval is 30 minutes. We have currently been doing it for 15 minutes, and we download it every week. Can we continue doing that? Would that be better so, since we're downloading the data every week, to continue doing it for 15 minutes as an interval, or should I change that for a 30-minute?
Okay. The 30 minutes is a recommendation. It's not a requirement for you to do 30 minutes, but if in your practice it's more suitable for you to do every 15 minutes and download weekly, that is okay. We are not going to say that you cannot do that.
Okay, perfect. And then my last question is, I heard you guys say that we're now going to be uploading the sheet that has that contains the out of the range temperature. Is this something new? Because previously, when we were doing the excursion, we've never uploaded anything. We just explain based on the data logger that we have how many minutes it was out of range.
So normally what we require is an upload of manual temperature logs along with the explanations, or some practices may not upload them, so they fax them to us and then we upload them for providers in the system. But we are transitioning to data loggers, so we need to be able to see your data files and your manual temperature logs as part of that. So it's very helpful to compare. So
there is going to be a button when we're submitting the excursion that can let us submit the excursion and upload.
There is a button now to upload your temperature logs, yeah. So you can do that, yeah. And I would just like to, thank you. I just would like to clarify your question about the login interval. It is a requirement, but the way the requirement reads is that login interval must be of at least 30 minutes. So we don't want you setting it up for an hour, 24 hours. So 30 minutes certainly, or less. Depending on your data logger, you might make that, whatever you describe, if it works for you at 15 minutes, then that's perfectly okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank you all again for joining us for this webinar, Introduction to Digital Data Loggers for VFC Providers. We hope you found this information helpful, and please keep your eye out for upcoming events just as this. Have a great day.
Thank you. That does conclude the conference. You may disconnect at this time.